waves of destiny, jealousy. The world around me shimmered with newfound clarity. My mind was a whirl of sensations, his warmth, the subtle scent of the sea, and the paradoxical softness and pressure of his lips. After all this time, I'd finally had my first kiss. It was definitely a 30 out of 10, no regrets. If that was a transaction, I was definitely going into business. Mentally, I slapped myself for wanting more. I blushed, suddenly realizing Kweku was staring at me, obviously reliving the kiss himself. Our eyes met before he dove into the water from the rock he was sitting on. Moments later, he surfaced from the sea, his chocolate-brown eyes sparkling. "Come in," he said, his voice warm and inviting. "Are you sure?" I replied, my voice raised to meet him over the sound of the crashing waves. "What if it didn't work? How do we even know? I don't feel any different." Kweku's expression softened. "Don't worry, you'll see it worked. Just dip beneath the surface for a moment." Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the water. Kweku offered his hand. "I'll hold your hand. You'll be fine, Amma." "You sure?" I asked again, images of the safety of my house flashing in my mind. "No harm will come to you. You're safe with me." I took his hand and slowly submerged my head. To my amazement, I could breathe. I stood up again, water streaming off my face, and Kweku smiled at me, nodding encouragingly. "Ready now?" he asked. I nodded, excitement and nervousness mingling in my chest. With a final deep breath, I submerged completely. Instead of a rush of water filling my lungs, the sensation was smooth, almost like breathing air. The initial panic ebbed away, replaced by an exhilarating sense of freedom. Every sense was heightened, the gentle current against my skin, the vivid colors, the rhythmic pulse of the ocean. Realizing something, I still had my legs. Wasn't I supposed to transform, like in the books? I glanced at Kweku and froze at the sight before me. A face chiseled from ebony, with sharp, regal features and a powerful jawline, held eyes that glowed green, like emeralds. Dreadlocks flowed longer than before, cascading over broad shoulders like a dark, flowing river. His onyx chest and arms were alight with glowing green tattoos that pulsed with an otherworldly light. Muscles, larger and more defined, rippled beneath the skin, exuding raw, powerful energy. Below the waist, a magnificent green tail shimmered with iridescent scales. His presence was godlike, undeniably supernatural, radiating both strength and grace. It took me a second to realize that this magnificent creature was Kweku. Kweku noticed my shock and the way I instinctively recoiled. He gently held my waist, pulling me back to him. I couldn't tear my eyes away from his transformed appearance, my heart pounding. "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you," he said gently. "I forgot to mention, I look different underwater. This is my true form, unrestrained. Now that I am submerged, I can breathe freely. I transformed to be able to linger on land longer." In my shock, I thought, wow, I just kissed that? Kweku laughed suddenly, surprise and amusement flashing in his glowing eyes. The laughter was so hearty, it made him hold his stomach. "What's so funny?" I asked, dumbfounded, searching his features, my own lips quivering in anticipation of the joke being shared. "Oh, Amma," he said, catching his breath. "I could barely hear you before, but now that we're submerged, I can hear you loud and clear." He laughed again, the sound bubbling through the water. "What is it?" I pressed. "All right," he said, sobering himself. "Now that you're here with me, there's something you should know, for your sake and mine." "Yes?" I urged, curiosity burning. Still chuckling, he continued, "You might want to be more careful with your thoughts while we're down here." "My thoughts? What? Why?" "Because down here I can hear them." It took a moment for it to sink in, then my hand slapped over my mouth. "You mean you just—" "Yes." He started chuckling again. "You can read my mind?" I blurted out, my eyes widening in shock. A wave of vulnerability washed over me as I tried to recall everything I had been thinking. Since when? How much do you know? My face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and curiosity. Actually, it's not so much your thoughts I hear, but your heart, if I'm being accurate about it. My heart? I echoed, confused. I can almost hear your heart up there, too. He gestured towards the surface, but it's always very faint until your emotions rise, or you try to lie to me. Then it becomes a bit clearer. Kweku's calm demeanor did little to ease my racing thoughts. I didn't mean to invade your privacy, he said gently, but it was too late, and it comes naturally to me. The realization that he could hear my innermost thoughts left me feeling exposed, like a book with all its pages laid open. He pulled me closer then, the ease with which I floated into him in the water catching me off guard. For the second time today, I found my lips inches from his, but this time his emerald eyes were darkened with a blatant desire that startled me. "Didn't you ever wonder how I know you're in love with me?" he murmured, his voice a tantalizing whisper. "Despite the words you said, I've known from the beginning. Everything you've done so far, you've done for me." His words, the intensity in his gaze, the proximity of our bodies, electrified me, leaving me lightheaded. Embarrassed, I could hardly meet his eyes. Kweku interrupted my thoughts, his expression suddenly serious. "Amma, there is something I have to confess before we go any further. For the first time, I have lied to you. That kiss we shared could never be a simple transaction." His eyes burned with intensity. "That kiss, Amma." He seemed to struggle for words, a first for me. On his surreal face, he looked almost vulnerable. "You're incredible," he said finally. "After that kiss, I will never be the same." His words sent a shiver through me, the raw emotion in his eyes unmistakable. My body felt like it was heating the ocean for miles. "I had to get back into the water quickly," he continued, his eyes intense. "That kiss left me breathless." I was speechless, overwhelmed by his confession and the depth of his feelings. Considering where we were, if he was trying to drown me, he was doing a pretty good job, and for good measure, he'd just stopped my heart. "You can hear my heart down here too, if you try," Kweku said, a gentle smile playing on his lips. "I can?" I asked, intrigued. "Sure you can," he assured me. "It might not be completely clear since you're new to it, but go ahead and focus on nothing but me." Redundant much?" I joked. He smiled wider, so happy in his element. "Close your eyes," he instructed softly. "Clear your mind of everything else. Listen to the rhythm of the water around us, and then focus solely on me. Let your mind reach out, like a whisper, and you might just hear it." I did as he said, closing my eyes and pushing away lingering doubts and nerves. The gentle ebb and flow of the water became clearer, its soft hum soothing my racing thoughts. I focused on Kweku, his presence, his warmth, the way he made me feel safe. For a moment, there was nothing but the quiet song of the sea, but then, faint and distant, I thought I felt a rhythm, steady and strong, like a heartbeat. I concentrated harder, and it became clearer, a pulsing cadence that seemed to resonate with my own heart. "Your presence here completes me in ways I didn't know were possible." I heard Kweku's deep voice, but his mouth didn't move. I blinked, startled by the intimacy of hearing his voice and his words in my mind. "Kweku," I gasped, gazing up at him, blushing as his eyes filled with knowing and further invitation. "You heard it," he said warmly. A wave of emotion washed over me, part awe, part disbelief. I felt a warm flush spread through me, a mix of shyness and exhilaration. Kweku's hand squeezed mine gently. "That's my heart, Amma, and it's beating just for you." A genuine, unguarded smile tugged at my lips. "I heard it," I whispered, feeling a connection deeper than words. "I really heard it." As we began to descend further, Kweku swam beside me, his movements fluid and graceful, guiding me through the water. My legs struggled to keep up with the powerful strokes of his tail, Are you all right? He asked, noticing my silence, his glowing green eyes glancing at me. You don't have to swim, just let me guide you. I nodded, unable to speak, too entranced by his true form. He had been dazzling before, but now he was even more captivating. Holding my hand, he led me deeper. Welcome to my world, he said, his voice resonating through the water. I realized how deep we were, and the sight before me left me in awe. I could see the pride and excitement in his eyes as he watched me take it all in. Coral reefs in vibrant hues of purple, blue, and orange stretched out like underwater gardens, teeming with colorful fish and other marine life. The water was clear and warm, with shafts of sunlight piercing through and illuminating everything with a surreal glow. Schools of fish swam past us in perfect harmony, their scales shimmering like precious gems. Sea anemones swayed gently with the currents, their delicate tendrils reaching out like fingers. A pod of dolphins swam by, their playful antics bringing a smile to my face. Everywhere I looked, there was something new and wondrous to behold. Kweku's voice broke through my awe. This is just the beginning, Amma, he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. There is so much more to see and experience. Our world is vast and full of wonders. I nodded, still too entranced to speak. Kweku's presence beside me was reassuring, his hand holding mine firmly yet gently. As we swam further, I noticed more details, the way the water seemed to hum with life, the gentle pull of the currents, and the rich, salty scent that filled my lungs with every breath. We swam past towering underwater cliffs covered in soft, undulating plants, their colors shifting and changing like a living tapestry. Small creatures darted in and out of crevices, their movements quick and furtive. In the distance, I saw a massive building, made of coral and seashells, shimmering with an ethereal light. That's the heart of our world, Kweku explained, following my gaze. It's where the council meets, and where many of us live. It's a place of great beauty and power. As we approached, I could see merfolk moving about, their tails flashing in the water, their movements as elegant and fluid as Kweku's. They looked up as we passed, their expressions filled with curiosity. Kweku nodded to them, and their expressions changed to one of warmth. He turned to me, his expression serious yet kind. I wanted to show you this, Amma, because I want you to understand the depth and beauty of my world. This is where I come from. I felt a swell of emotion at his words, a mix of awe and gratitude. It's incredible, I managed to say, my voice filled with wonder. Thank you for sharing this with me, Kweku. He smiled, squeezing my hand gently. There's no one else I'd rather share it with. My thoughts turned to the baby. Where's your daughter? Kweku paused, a warm smile spreading across his face. He pointed toward a large, mystical building shimmering in the distance. Our daughter is there, he replied. We swam towards the building, the water parting smoothly as we moved. As we approached, I marveled at the intricate details of the structure, coral and seashells woven together to create a beautiful, ethereal home. Inside, the soft glow of bioluminescent plants lit the way. Really? No mermaid-proof locks? I mused. Kweku rolled his eyes and chuckled. No, we don't need locks. We have pearlstone. Pearlstone? What's that? It's the strongest element in the sea, he explained. Almost impossible to break. It combines the resilience of stone with the luster of pearls. We entered a spacious room where the baby lay fast asleep under the watchful eyes of a mermaid. My heart swelled with happiness at the sight of the baby, but I didn't want to wake her. The mermaid was stunning, her beauty otherworldly, with flowing dreadlocks to her waist and delicate features that made me feel a pang of insecurity about my own ordinary appearance. This is Marina, Kweku introduced her. Marina, this is Amma, the baby's mother. Her eyes widened in surprise at his words, flickering to him in astonishment before settling back on me. Hi, I said, offering my hand, feeling awkward and unsure. Marina observed me curiously, then frowned at my hand and turned away without a word. I quickly pulled my hand back, feeling a distinct coldness in the water around us. Okay then? Kweku placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'll come back later when the baby's awake. I hesitated, feeling a tug at my heart. Maybe I should stay until she wakes up. It feels so hard to leave her this time. It's all right, she'll be fine, Kweku reassured me. Holding my hand, he led me out. As we swam, I glanced back at Marina watching us leave. Wow, I thought, so that was a mermaid. She was incredibly beautiful, but her gaze felt cold and distant. Kweku had told me I was more special than all the mermaids in the sea, yet I'd only met one, and she had already taken my breath away. A sudden tightness gripped my chest, my heart thudded, and my stomach twisted. I glanced at Kweku, wondering if he was as captivated by her as I was, but his focus was solely on the path ahead. I couldn't help but ask, "So, you have someone to look after your baby down here after all?" "No," he replied, his gaze steady. "Watching her is something I'd trust a select few to do, but no one is suited to be her mother." As I looked at him, he was smiling to himself. "Why are you smiling?" Then it dawned on me. I grabbed my chest. "Are you listening to my heart?" His smile widened into a grin. "You're jealous," he said. My face heated up instantly. "Jealous? Me? Of course not," I protested, though my voice wavered slightly. "I mean, she's stunning and all, but—" I paused, realizing how transparent I was being. "Okay, maybe a little," I admitted, huffing in exasperation. "But can you blame me? She looks like she walked out of a fantasy novel." Kweku's grin softened into a tender smile. "Amma, you have nothing to worry about. You're the one I brought here, the one I want to share my world with." His words sent a warm rush through me, easing the tightness in my chest. "Well, just so you know," I said, trying to regain some semblance of dignity, "I don't get jealous easily." He laughed, the sound light and reassuring. "Noted," he said, taking my hand again. "Shall we continue?" I nodded, feeling a bit more confident but still slightly self-conscious. "Lead the way," I said, squeezing his hand as we swam forward together. Then a thought occurred to me. "One more thing, can you maybe not listen in on all my thoughts?" "Sure," he said, his eyes returning to the familiar chocolate brown I was used to, his tattoos fading. "There," he winked. "No more listening." I realized then that we were going deeper still. "Exactly where are we going now?" I asked, a hint of panic in my voice. I was anxious about being taken away from the baby, the primary reason I came here. "We don't have to go any further," I said, trying to mask my unease. "There's just one more stop," Kweku replied. "There's someone I'd like you to meet." "You want me to meet someone else? Who?" "You'll see. She's waiting for us." "She?" The anticipation filled me with nervousness. My eyes caught sight of a larger structure, its grandeur even more imposing than the first, surrounded by hundreds of merfolk. My heart leaped into my throat, and I felt a rush of self-consciousness. I hadn't considered this, but the thought of approaching so many merfolk made me uneasy. "Kweku, wait," I said, tugging on his arm. "I can't." Kweku stopped, his brow furrowing in concern. "What is it? Tell me." "I'm not prepared to swim through so many of your kind. What if they don't like me?" "Like Marina, who couldn't stand me at all. Won't they think it's weird that I'm a human in their sea?" Having spent most of my time alone, I felt moderately socially equipped on land. This was a whole new ball game. Kweku squeezed my hand gently, his eyes searching mine. "Amma, you have nothing to fear. They will see you as I see you, as someone with a brave heart and a caring soul, and if anyone dares to think otherwise, they will have to answer to me." His eyes held a serious, protective glint. Despite his comforting words, my nerves were frayed. The thought of being judged by so many unfamiliar eyes was overwhelming. I looked back at the structure and the gathering crowd, feeling a wave of apprehension wash over me. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the water. Kweku leaned closer, his presence calming yet commanding. You can, Amma. I believe in you. And remember, you're not alone. I'll be right beside you every step of the way. Taking a deep breath, I nodded, though my heart still raced with anxiety. Okay, I said softly. I'm ready. With that, Kweku led me towards the grand structure, his hand holding mine firmly. As we approached, the structure became clearer, a magnificent underwater castle made entirely of pearl stone. Its towering spires glowed brilliantly with bioluminescent light, illuminating the sea around it. It was breathtaking, something I would never have believed if I weren't seeing it with my own eyes. We were going in there, I thought, my anticipation and nervousness building. As if that wasn't enough, to my horror, instead of guiding me straight inside, Kweku stopped right in the center of the merfolk. I looked at him, alarmed. The situation worsened when his action caused all the merfolk to stop what they were doing and find a place beyond each other's shoulders to get a clear view of me. Kweku! I screeched. It's all right, he said softly. You're safe, Amma. I want them all to meet you. Though he spoke softly to me, it felt like they all heard him as their gazes intensified. A new worry occurred to me. Oh no, I said. What if they hear my thoughts? Kweku shook his head. They can't. The reason I can hear your heart is because of a special connection between us. No one else can. I can hear those who are dear to me, like my parents, siblings, my daughter, and you. It's the same for other merfolk as well. Here, he said, a proud look on his face as he let go of my hand. To my horror, I began to drift a bit away from him. Stand here. Before I could cling to him again, I found myself sinking to the ocean floor, pulled by the traitorous force of gravity. As I floated down, all the merfolk surrounded me, their curious gazes fixed on my every move. Amma, Kweku announced, and my name carried through the water, sparking an excited murmur among the crowd. We lingered for a while until Kweku's eyes and tattoos started glowing again, and a serious look flashed across his incredible face. The mermen began to disperse. What's happening? I asked. I've sent them away. I think they've seen enough. I can't help but be protective of you, Amma. Despite my blush, I noticed many of the mermaids lingered, intensely interested in me, their eyes fixated on my legs. As they started to get too close, Kweku took my hand again, leading me away. We swam through the mystical palace, its walls adorned with glowing corals and shimmering seashells. Soft bioluminescent lights illuminated our path, casting a magical glow over everything. Ornate carvings of ancient sea creatures and intricate mosaics decorated the halls. We reached a grand, shimmering room. It was beautiful, with walls and towering columns made of pearl stone. The columns were adorned with delicate sea plants, and a soft, ethereal light filtered through the water. In the center, a stunning mermaid sat on a throne made of intertwined corals and pearls. Her regal black skin gleamed, and her long dreadlocks flowed around her like a dark, shimmering waterfall. She exuded an aura of power and grace, her presence commanding the space. Of course, in a palace, there would be royals. I mentally nudged myself. Kweku didn't need to tell me this was their queen. It was clear. Amma, this is Queen Makeda, my mother, Kweku introduced. She has been eager to meet you. Mother, Amma. Shock coursed through me, and I gawked at Kweku's proud, smiling face. There were 3 shocks to process, each taking their own time to become clear. First, Kweku had taken me to meet his mother. Your mother? I stammered, my mind struggling to keep up. But before I could finish processing, she spoke. Leave her with me, she said to him, her gaze warm and welcoming. Second, his mother was a queen. Kweku nodded and reluctantly began to swim away. Panic flared inside me as I watched him leave. Wait, you're leaving me alone? I wanted to protest, but the words stuck in my throat. Kweku paused as if he'd heard me. Queen Makeda smiled reassuringly, gesturing for me to stay. She'll be fine, Kweku. And third, the most staggering realization of all, which I was only beginning to grasp. As Kweku disappeared from view, Queen Makeda swam down to me, inspecting me with great curiosity. My mind raced, finally piecing it together. If Kweku's mother is a queen, then... I can tell from your expression that he hadn't told you he's a prince, she said, her voice calm and regal, just as the realization hit me. Prince? I echoed, my mind reeling. Kweku's a prince? Not just a prince, the queen corrected. The prince of all merfolk and underwater life, of all the sea. My thoughts spun wildly. Kweku, a prince? How had I missed this? The weight of the revelation pressed down on me, leaving me stunned and breathless. She looked me up and down, her touch gentle yet probing, as she placed her hands on my legs, then my chin, tilting my head up to look into my eyes. Finally, she placed her palm on my chest, where it lingered for a long while. No wonder he loves you. You are striking in every way, she said, her eyes reflecting a mix of admiration and intrigue. There is more inside you than I have ever seen in all my years. I can hardly believe that my son has actually found you. Queen Makeda's gaze softened, her regal demeanor giving way to a more personal tone. So, he hadn't told you of his status. What has he revealed to you, truly? I panicked, unsure what to say, realizing that the absurd things Kweku had encouraged me to do might not go over well with his mother, the queen. Was this the moment when reality would finally catch up with me? I was a human, asked to be a mermaid baby's mother, and now I discovered it wasn't just any baby, but the child of a prince. The absurdity of it all was overwhelming. She peered down at me expectantly, and something told me I couldn't lie to her. The baby, I managed, my voice trembling, heart pounding in my chest. My hands shook, a cold sweat forming despite the water around us. My granddaughter, she said with pride. Yes? What of her? Her gaze was steady and slightly impatient. My stomach twisted in knots, the weight of Kweku's request feeling even heavier now that I knew his true identity. How could I say it? Could I tell her that he wanted me to be the mother of her grandchild? Well, I hesitated, my mind racing, struggling to find the right words amid my confusion and fear. Go on. Her eyes pierced into mine, a serious glint evident now. My throat tightened, making it hard to speak. He asked me to... I trailed off, the words catching in my throat. I couldn't bring myself to say it out loud, feeling the gravity of the situation press down on me. She smiled gently, but her words carried a firm edge. So you know, but understand, there are dire consequences in our world for those who defy my commands. Her smile was warm, yet her eyes made it clear she wasn't to be trifled with. He asked me to be her mother, I blurted out, my face flushing with fear and regret. I searched her face for judgment or shock, but she only smiled knowingly, making me feel safe enough to continue. My heart raced, breath quickening. And? Her eyes narrowed slightly. And that I need to bond with her to save her life, I added, my voice trembling. The thought of failing made my chest tighten. And? Her tone sharpened, gaze unwavering. And that he loves me, I whispered, the admission sending a shiver down my spine, making my heart race. The words hung in the water between us, heavy and charged. Yes? She nodded, her gaze intense. I saw a flicker of emotion in her eyes, making my heart ache with a strange mix of hope and dread. And that's it. I felt more exposed and vulnerable than ever, barely meeting her eyes. That's all he's told you? Her brow furrowed deeply. Yes, I confirmed, my voice barely a whisper, filled with uncertainty. I felt small and insignificant under her intense scrutiny. After all this time? I see, she mused, her expression growing more thoughtful. Well, to complete what he should have told you, and as time is of the essence, let me fill in the gaps. By the way, are you enjoying our world so far? Yes, I think so, I said, still unsure about how this conversation would end. This journey is not just about discovery. Amma, you must understand the significance of your presence here, she began, her voice gentle yet commanding. Our kingdom, the merfolk, have thrived under the guidance of my family for centuries. Kweku, our prince, carries a great burden and responsibility. His role is not just a title, it is a promise to protect and lead our people. When he was a child, there was a great war that nearly destroyed our city. Kweku, even as a young boy, fought the invaders back and stood firm to help save many lives. That is the kind of leader he is. The image of Kweku as a small young merman swirled in my mind. He must have been adorable, but imagining him as a hero was a bit challenging. I had only seen him sitting casually on the big rock by the sea, always responding gently to my questions, no matter how flustered I got. He was always so laid back. Kweku's love for you has brought you here for a reason, the queen was saying. You see, there are ancient prophecies that speak of a human who will bridge our worlds. Someone with a brave heart and a pure soul. Someone like you. The bond you share with his daughter is powerful, Queen Makita explained. She is special, and so are you. Together you can shape our future. I gazed at her, realizing this wasn't going as I expected. But then again, what exactly was I expecting? She had just confirmed that all of Kweku's requests were perfectly reasonable, and even added more layers to them. Queen Makita's gaze shifted, her eyes narrowing as if sensing something unseen. Her sudden stillness made my pulse quicken, and I glanced around, feeling an ominous presence closing in. Mother! A deep, cold voice echoed through the chamber, sending shivers down my spine. The queen swiftly moved in front of me, her body a protective barrier. I peered around her, just catching sight of a figure approaching, imposing and radiating icy authority. He was by far the largest merman I had ever seen. There's pandemonium outside, the voice continued, now laced with cold anger. Have you heard? The merfolk are saying that Kweku has brought someone here, a human girl from the land above. Dax, Queen Makita addressed him, her tone cool and controlled. I haven't seen Kweku. You do well to go searching for him yourself. I could sense the tension in the queen's stance and realized she was trying to get him to leave. I stayed hidden behind her, fear suddenly gripping me. They said he came this way, Dax insisted. They said she was like nothing ever seen. The mermen were practically salivating. Is it so boring here? Are they so low? His voice dripped with disdain. If Kweku has indeed brought a human, you would have dealt with him according to our laws. Isn't that right, Mother? He's gotten away with murder since his precious Dala's tragic end. Now he's gone mad, plucking land dwellers from the dirt and washing their germs in our sea. Yet you insist on making him king. Now is not the time or place, the queen said firmly. It's exactly the time and place, Dax countered, his voice rising. If your oh-so-precious son has gone mad, I need to know. I am the elder son. The throne is my right. He paused, and his gaze sharpened. What's that behind your back, Mother? Nothing, the queen replied, her voice steady. No. There is something there. I saw it. Something small and brown. What are you hiding? His tone was accusatory. I felt his realization like a tangible force, and panic surged through me. It can't be, he muttered, floating forward. The queen blocked his path, but then he vanished. Her eyes searched the room frantically, and I turned, feeling a chill behind me. Dax was floating right behind me, his green eyes glowing ominously, dreadlocks swirling like serpents in the water. Startled, I stumbled back into the queen. You will not touch her, Queen Makita declared. She has my permission to be here, and she is Kweku's. She's... Kweku's? Dax's voice was filled with surprise and disbelief. You mean, you would let him have her? It is not a choice, Dax, but a destiny, the queen said firmly. Dax loomed over me, his presence prickling my skin like sharp spikes. His eyes bore into mine, jaw clenched and fists curled, as if he were holding himself back from violence. This is the girl the whole city is talking about? He said. I blinked, realizing his mouth hadn't moved. The one the mermen want? Again, his mouth wasn't moving. I suddenly understood. I was hearing his thoughts. Legs? This is how they look up close. Such delicate tendrils. God's heart. They extend along her entire body, soft and smooth all over. Her skin, it glistens, and her eyes, mesmerizing. His eyes slid over me, his expression darkening. This isn't a girl. She's the most exotic creature I've ever seen, he thought, glaring at me with contempt. And Kweku gets to have her? His gaze shifted from me to the queen and back. She should be mine. His thoughts seethed with jealousy. He floated closer, his eyes never leaving mine. Why should Kweku have everything? The throne, the respect, and now you. Queen Makita's grip on my shoulder tightened. Dax, this is not the way, she said aloud, her voice laced with warning. Amma is under my protection and Kweku's. You will not lay a hand on her. Dax sneered, his eyes flicking to his mother and then back to me. I felt a distinct sense that her presence was the only thing keeping me safe. His thoughts grew darker, more resolute. You've always made things hard for me, Mother, but I know what I must do. Everything in my life has been by force, and I will take her by force. His thoughts made me jump in place, my breath catching in my throat. His eyes flashed with sudden realization. You can hear my heart? From my expression, he understood the truth. Rage contorted his features as he reached for me, his hand moving with deadly intent. In that split second, a blur of motion and ripples interrupted his advance. Kweku materialized suddenly, his face etched with fury, green eyes blazing, and tattoos shimmering with an ethereal glow. In a swift, powerful motion, his hand clamped around Dax's throat with an iron grip. With a primal roar that echoed through the water, he hurled Dax with one hand through the chamber walls, crashing through 4 of them. The water erupted in massive waves, shaking everything around us so violently that I feared the entire structure would collapse. The sheer force of Kweku's power left me breathless, the intensity radiating from him sending shockwaves through my very core. I stood there, trembling. Kweku's presence was a protective barrier between me and the chaos. His eyes, usually so warm, now blazed with a fierce intensity I had never seen before. You will not touch her, Kweku growled, his voice resonating with authority and rage. Dax struggled up, his expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. You dare to defy me, brother, for a human? This isn't about defiance. Amma is not yours to take. Kweku turned to me, his expression serious. Hold on to me. Close your eyes. I obeyed, wrapping my arms around him and squeezing my eyes shut. He held me securely with both hands. In an instant, we were surging through the water, the world around us a blur of motion. Kweku moved with the speed and precision of a torpedo. His body, sleek and powerful, cut through the water effortlessly. Behind him, a trail of bubbles marked his path, a visible wake of his rapid ascent. In mere seconds, we broke through the surface, and I gasped for air, coughing as if I had forgotten how to breathe on land.